Not just the okay, Becky, thank you. Sounds like you can hear me and you can probably see the screen. Let's see, I probably need to share it first, huh? Not showing it. So you're not seeing a screen yet, but that's okay. Sounds like the audio is good. Oh, nice big breath. Big breath, everyone. Okay, you can see the title slide. Great, great, great. Oh, glad to offer this. You're already the gratitude with you women. This is right off the bat that gives me goosebumps because this is why I love working with women. It's not that men aren't grateful. It's that women are expressive about it, and it's really a beautiful thing. You guys think you're excited to be here. I am excited to be here. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. And it looks like here you're going to see my desktop. That's awesome. I'm one of those that crams the desktop full of crud. Okay, so we're getting going. Know that you have a question box, and you can use that question box whenever you would like. In fact, I urge you to put some of the questions in as we go along. I won't be able to get to all of them as we go through, but I will be able to get to them when we get to the end. So I'll take however long we need to get to that at the end. So I am Katie Snapp. Some of you know me. Maybe some of you don't. I love it if you don't. I love meeting new people virtually, right? You're not meeting me very personally, but you are meeting me electronically, which is the way so much is done. There's a picture of me, a little touched up, but hey, I have a company called Skirt Strategies, and my byline is tiny trainings, big results, because I believe that in our hectic world, we don't necessarily have time to go away and spend hours and hours in classes and come back and see that it's incorporated. I believe doing it in small pieces is what works. So before we go too far, I really want to start. I want to start with you. I want to start with why you're here. I want to start with where your head is. And something is prompting you to go out on your own. Perhaps some of what we'll talk about in the next hour will get you clear on that, hopefully. But I find that this is very therapeutic. Even just talking about it or taking yourself through the process is important. So think about how you're feeling. Let me guess. Maybe intrigued, maybe nervous, not about the webinar, but about the general process. Maybe unsure. And more than anything, may I say you may be excited? I mean, excited is a good thing. A little bit of fear in there, but excited. So, you think you're excited. Let me tell you, this is exciting for me to be able to share with you what I have learned as a consultant for umpty-ump years. And when I saw that list of areas that you all sent me, some of you sent me ahead of time for where you would consult, it was really neat. I'll share with you that list in just a minute because you'll see that there's a lot of power in just a small group. Here's a quotation that I wanted to start with. I pulled this from Facebook of all places. Somebody had written this and I adapted it just a little bit because it speaks to the process of change. Sometimes when we let go, we're afraid of the emptiness, but that emptiness is just, quote, a meantime, a place where we're challenged. Wait, open your heart, open your mind, it will come. But during the meantime, don't give up hope. The difference between the time where you are secure at a job where you may be right now and a future that you don't know whether it's going to be secure or not is an in the meantime. And it takes some faith and focus and dedication and a process. That's what we're going to be talking about. I myself have gone through that process. I've been there. I've done that. That's a shot of me. I think that was at the Society of Women Engineers National Convention where I did a workshop. Who knows what I'm talking about? And my colleague, Kim and I met actually we met in Albuquerque at a yoga studio and we found out that we had a lot of background in common. So I wanted to pull her in. So I'm going to be giving you she's not here live today, but I'm going to give you her background because some of her background is why we call it the time to fly. So stay tuned for that. But some history about me. I have been a consultant for, I said umpty years, but you know what? I'm just going to say it, 28 years. I left big industry and a professional salary to do it. I left a very secure job. I was an electrical engineer. It's about the farthest thing from what I do right now, but it was 180 degrees from what I do. In 2006, and that 28 years has gone through a myriad of evolutions, and you'll find that your consulting career does that too. One of my big evolutions, I guess, it was in 2006. I became an ICF certified coach. That's the International Coaching Federation, which is one of the certifiers, probably one of the most popular ones. And I have over 400 coaching hours under that certification. So I've worked with individuals. I work with small organizations. I worked a lot with nonprofit. We have a lot of nonprofit women represented here. I think the ladies from For Good who follow me there. It's great to have you here. So I've done that, and that's why I know that what I have learned and where I've expanded is something that I can pass on to you. It also helps that part of what I've done in consulting is management consulting and teaching. So I'm great at teaching. I am great at putting things into steps and processes and actionable phases. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. And then we have Kim, who is an amazing woman. Kim has been in, her last name is Witzik. Kim has been in marketing and advertising for over 25 years. She's gone out on her own a couple of different times. And so I bring her in as a support story to this webinar, going out on your own, because she has done it. She's worked a lot with national brands, some big ones, really a lot of big ones through her marketing and advertising. She left several years ago. She left to start a nonprofit, the Free Arts Minnesota. And when she left, she was married at the time. She dealt with a fear factor for sure. And she saw that she was able to go out as a consultant. She eventually went back to advertising full time in various different agencies. And during that second full time advertising career, her husband died as a result of some medication that the big pharmacy companies had failed to label correctly. So it automatically just immediately changed her desire to work where she still had the desire to work where she was, but she also suddenly had this opening for desire to work on this cause for awareness with pharmaceutical companies. And she stayed working full time, but also started dipping her toe in the advocacy world. And you saw in that picture of her, that's what she's doing, is presenting to a National Physicians Alliance, and she continues to do that now. She had a great job with travel, but when her husband died, her world changed. So she was more and more looking like she wanted to go out on her own. She started to realize that she had her own brand, and you have your own brand. I'm not even going to say you have your own brand in what you're doing right now. So it is something that you'll become more aware of, like she and I have. So that big sensation of the passion for working on the advocacy piece moved her to leave her advertising. And I love the way this happened. One of her clients was United Airlines. And there was one day that she says she clearly remembers, she'll never forget the day. They had started working as an advertising agency with United Airlines that had just come out of bankruptcy, and her company was working on the campaign. And so there were these big, beautiful posters. And I remember this campaign. The byline of it was "It's time to fly." And I'm showing a picture of one of them. They're beautiful posters. Unfortunately, they're the up and down, the portrait format, and long and skinny up and down. So I can't zoom into it without cutting off part of it. But they're these beautiful posters with their advertising byline, which was "It's time to fly." Now, Kim had been working on this project for a long time, and the campaign was a part of her every day. But one day she was walking through the halls, and she happened to look up, and she saw one of those posters that she'd been looking at all the time. And she realized this is a sign. She suddenly saw these words, "It's time to fly," as meaning something completely different. And it was like, to her, inspiration to jump off that cliff. and it was the inspiration that she needed. So she did indeed go out and work on her own. And some of the lessons learned that she had from both that time and the other time that she had left her career, she and I have created a list of lessons learned for you today. And that's a bulk of what I want to share with you today. I do have, for many of you know, my first book was called Skirt Strategies, 249 Success Tips for Women in Leadership. And the 249th tip, I thought, yes, it is quirky that I have 249 tips. That's just for me to be quirky. The 249th, the last tip, I put this intentionally as the last tip, is strive to be someone's role model. I kept it simple and I kept it short in that last tip because in so many few words, that says so much. And that says to me that if you're trying to be a role model, if that's really what you're targeting, then you're saying that you want to be an example to others and you want to be the best that you can be. You want to achieve and strive. It doesn't mean you will definitely achieve it, but it means striving. Going out on your own is a big piece of this because it's the path to being someone that makes a difference for someone else. When you're a consultant, you have the capability to have so much more control over your life, but you're doing it in a way where you're taking your area of expertise and you're putting it out there, you're deploying it. So it consists of three big pieces. And those three pieces we'll talk about next. The enticement, the fear, we need to address the fear, and then those 5 lessons learned that Kim and I created for you. We will always leave you with what to do next. So stick around at the very end. I'm going to give you the info as how to get a consultation session with me for no charge. I'll spend 30 minutes with you if you want to delve into, it's kind of therapeutic actually, talking about what your specific situation is and whether you want to go one direction or the other. I also have an Are You Ready to Be a Consultant checklist, and I'll give you that URL at the end of, towards the end of these slides. First of all, then, the enticement. The enticement. There's so many reasons to go out on your own. I advocate for you to keep that in the forefront of your mind, especially when you feel like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? The enticement is knowing that that's why you're doing it. Dream a little. You will own your own business. You define your schedule, what you do all day. I mean, on Monday, I had 2 meetings. I did a lot of desk work and I played tennis in the middle of the day. Now, I don't tell that to everybody, especially my clients, but there's many days where I don't put on professional clothes. And I really dig that. So you define your own schedule. You have a job that makes a difference or serves a purpose because you went out to do it intentionally. You work from a cozy home or an office. You can certainly have an office in the community if you would like. You help others by sharing your experiences. You have the freedom that you don't have now, and I don't want you to let go of this. If you can dream it, you can absolutely do it. I know that it's not a matter of whether you can do it or not. It's a matter of when you'll be doing it and how. It's a matter of when and how. Your expertise can be out there in a way that works for you. It just takes a process and it takes a plan. I pulled the 20 top consulting areas thriving today from Entrepreneur Magazine, and I wanted to share them with you. I'm not going to talk about all these, but there's 20 of them. Some of them I'm like, really? Like insurance, okay. I wouldn't really want to go into insurance, but that's just not my shtick. Executive search, easy to do. Easy to do if that's your area. If you do interviewing, especially if you're an HR person. Those of you that are in nonprofit, you can see that there's grantsmanship up there. There's business writing. There's career counseling. Essentially, if you essentially if you take anything that you're really very good at, maybe you're great at grant writing, you could offer writing services or grantsmanship. Or communications. There are expertise areas that you have right now that can be parlayed into that. One of them that I wanted to identify was auditing. And this, for a lot of times, auditing sounds like it's going to be, some sort of, for telecommunications firms or for financial organizations. It really isn't if you think about it. You could go into any other organization with an assessment of what you do well in measurable terms and give them an audit. And I leave this as a hint for you because as you start to identify what your area of consulting is, think about the entree being an audit or an assessment. When that auditing report comes back, an audit I think sounds kind of official. I like assessment or some sort of review, maybe. When that report comes back, adding into it the very last section being consultants' recommendations, you have your next step to just springboard you right into here's how I can help you next. So auditing is nothing more than measuring what other people are doing based on what you know is good or needs help. Okay, so some ideas for you there. So the fear, let's go to the fear. Is the idea of leaving security holding you back? Let me be blunt. Being an independent consultant is not guaranteed income immediately. It is not. And it can have a lot of ends that need shored up, a lot of arms and legs, a lot of pieces that you have to figure out what's not working right and then fix it. That's fine. You may have self-doubts about your abilities, and you might have no idea where to start. That's perfectly fine. Something is bringing you here today that says you're wanting to go out on it. So hang on to that. And then I'll give you some of the path towards figuring out what the next steps are. A piece of it is that self-doubt about your abilities. Here's a critical question that comes up a lot at this point. Don't I have to be an expert to be a consultant? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The word expert seems a little bit scary. Several years ago, a friend of mine who's a lawyer, she does business consulting, employment consulting. I was talking about something that I was doing, and I referred to myself as an expert. And then I backed off and I said, "Oh, Lorna, I'm not really an expert. I shouldn't have said that. That sounds kind of haughty." And she said, "Oh, I don't know. I think in the legal arena, you would actually qualify for one because look at what you do, and it's solely what you do, and you've been doing it for years." And I thought, I think I've become an expert in a lot of areas. You've become an expert in a lot of areas. In your area, of whatever your industry is, whether it's nonprofit or tech or small business, you have an area that you've become very good at. And so as I asked many of you ahead of time, most of you are in nonprofit in this call, I asked you what your consulting area would be if you were to go out right now. What would you call yourself, and what would be your title? And here's what I got back. I thought this was so powerful. Consulting areas here today, and these are just some of them. I'll be a consultant in social health planning. Great. I'm going to be a strategic and fundraising consultant to arts organizations. I'm going to be a life transition coach for corporate clients. I'll be helping nonprofit world with finances and long-term planning. And you can see the rest of those. There's a life coach. There's a consultant for staff development. There's a not-for-profit consultant. There's a consultant in leadership, organizational structure, and culture. I've done a lot of that. It's a very easy area to get into and find work because everybody needs it. And then several of you where I have no idea. And a few of you just said, I'm just starting out, so I'm really not sure. Is that okay? Yes, that's exactly why you're here. I use the think, say, do approach. And that's the way we progress. That's the way we make actions happen, as it becomes first with a thought. Then we actually verbalize it, and then we go and do it. And the more that you kind of ramrod that process, I thought it, so I'm going to make myself say it out loud, and then I'm going to make myself do it. It becomes natural. The do actually starts happening after the say part, which is why in webinars are so powerful for you to attend, especially attending live, because you can add those questions, and you might not be talking out loud, although you certainly can at your desk. You are making it more real. There are 5 lessons learned then that I will give to you right now as to send yourself forward. This is based on my experience and Kim's experience, and we put them into 5. The first lesson number 1, is know where your head is. Why did you show up today? Why did you show up today? And feel free anytime to jump in and use the questions. I'm more or less monitoring those as we go along. Feel your passion. Pay attention to the emotions that are speaking. That's your gut. That's your intuition. And knowing where that is really important. You're thinking it, you're feeling it. That's going to end up translating into saying and doing. Second lesson, start thinking like the expert. Start thinking like it. So you're going to move into that role, and you may not see yourself right now as the expert at work, but people come to you for something. And if you start in the Time to Fly course, that's actually one of the inventories that you take for yourself is, what do people come to me for? What am I seeing as the expert in? And how might that be something that ends up translating into a product or a service? So if you start thinking like the expert that you are, you're going to move into that role. Look for evidence where you have the know-how, and start collecting those areas of know-how. We have, at the Time to Fly course, we have 8 invaluable characteristics of a good consultant, and we share that in the training class. The invaluable characteristics are things like being resourceful, knowing how to say no, or knowing how to say, I don't know, but I'll find out for you. Knowing how to appear in a way where you look confident to them so that they indeed have confidence in you. That's the way it works. If they don't have confidence in you, it comes from something. Often it's because they're sensing some level of insecurity. So know that. So it's important that being a great consultant includes understanding the behaviors. Lesson number 3, lay the groundwork before you jump. Now, some of this you can do, and I will bet you that you can do a lot more in parallel with your present job than you think. Kim, for example, when Kim had decided that she was indeed going to go out on her own and start an advocacy for her ex-husband, or for her husband that had died from the pharmaceutical era, she knew that she wanted to become a freelancer in advertising. So she began to show up and be present at her job, even though she knew that she would be leaving. When she let them know that it was time to go, she didn't say anyway. Listen to the difference between saying, you know what, I think my time here is up. She said instead, I think there's something bigger out there for me. So you're not burning the bridge that's behind you. And in fact, she positioned herself in such a way that they saw her as an outside consultant while she was still an employee, and they became one of her first clients. So she made a very smooth transition, a very amicable one, and it worked for helping get her out on her own. So it sends a message to others that your energy is still there. If you've mentally checked out, you start looking like someone that is not engaged in a job. Therefore, they're not a business person, or they don't have that frame of mind, or they're not professional, or they're not serious. That will translate into your new job if you're not, your new consulting job, if you're not careful about it. I recommend that you start being present, showing up, finding the flexibility where you can, where you are, and then determining that, one of the factors, how much do you need to live? So that's, piece of the financial piece. So, in fact, you can, when you're going through this process, treat it like a project. I find that when we treat something like a project, we start to see it as something with a beginning and an ending, and has to have the timeline, has to have resources in place. It really helps, rather than feeling like this big fuzzy thing. So that's a great way of looking at it. Lesson number 4, use your language to drive your behavior. So that think, say, do process is really important for you evolving. The act of leaving, as I mentioned earlier, the act of leaving actually starts before you leave. So when you say language like, I'm not happy here, it sounds different than I'm ready to evolve on to the next thing, or I found that there's something out there bigger for me. Pay attention to the emotions that are speaking when you do use your language. Start thinking of yourself in that future person as a consultant and as a go-to expert externally from your job where you are right now, and you'll find that that starts helping your behavior. I think consultant is a sophisticated word, so I like that many of you are using it for your future. And then lastly, lesson number 5, don't do it alone. Don't do it alone. I use a live mastermind group of like-minded people that are in sort of the same process of building their business as I am. And I teach you how to set up a mastermind support group in the Time to Fly course. So finding encouragement along the way, whether you use a mastermind group or not. And if you don't know what the term mastermind is, then just know that it's a small group of people that go through strategic planning and support and idea generating together. Find encouragement along the way. That happens to be a picture of some of my gal pals. I think we were at a happy hour, but about half of those are in small businesses here in my community. Dealing with self doubt is really important. Your friends will be the ones that prop you up. You'll also find that there's some people that shoot you down. Sometimes your closest friends, and that can be something that's really tough to deal with. So having a support system is really important. Don't do it. Don't do it alone. I pulled this slide out because at first Kim and I were talking about it, and at first I looked at it and I said, "Well, if you're not doing what you love, you're wasting your time." So the slide says, "If you're not doing what you love, you're wasting your time." And I was talking to Kim about it. I said, "You want to kind of talk about this?" And she said, "I don't know that that's really necessarily true because you're not wasting your time. Everything that you've done up until now is to lay groundwork for something else." Any of you that are over 30 years old or 40 years older, the older the better. And it's not because of age, it's because of experience, right? It's subtle difference. Any of you that have been through enough cycles of life know that the next cycle gives us insight as to what the previous one taught us. It starts to make sense in retrospect. Where you are right now, you're doing something. I hope you love it, but you're doing something that's going to be laying the groundwork for your next phase of life. And that's important to see it that way. So those are the five. So those are the five tips that I would give to you, and I would love to entertain some questions right here. So in the question box, if you wanted to add something there, please do. I'm going to hang on just a minute. Make that just a little bit bigger. Okay. So consider what it is that made you show up today and what those 5 lessons learned say to you. Okay. I'm curious about where you all are. Are you feeling a bit of a nagging? Is it is it something that is, I'm just kind of wanting to know more about what Katie has to say. Being a consultant is exciting and scary and unpredictable sometimes. But if you feel that sense of that you can do it, is it a nagging? Is it an intuition that's telling you something? Something along the lines of, well, I think maybe it's something that I want to be doing differently, or I've grown out of my job, or I've grown to where I can do something more helpful besides this. Are you ready for your next chapter? And I know ready is a really it's it depends on the context of ready. You might say, well, mentally I'm ready, but financially I don't think I'm ready at all. Or financially I'm ready, but mentally I have absolutely no idea. So think about that. Think about why you did show up today. How do you decide on your next steps? What's the way that you make a decision? Are you an action taker? What's going to take you from where you are right now to the next piece? For many of us, that is something that moves us forward is just to take action. There's something called the lean startup. If I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but if you've heard of lean or Six Sigma or process improvement, um, there's a model today that uses the word lean quite a bit. And in a lean startup, we kind of do the ready, fire, aim approach because getting action is the best way to learn. So without putting yourself at financial risk, what is it that you can do to be an action taker if that indeed is the type of decision maker that you are? Maybe you're an intuitive decider. You just go with your gut. Women are great at doing that. We're just, I'm just feeling really pretty good about this. Maybe you're a careful planner. Maybe it has to be laid out. I have talked to some women that have a 2-year plan laid out. They have talked to lawyers. They've talked to job coaches. They've actually started to trademark a logo. All of that is nice. That's great. And if that's the kind of planner you are, absolutely go for it. That tends not to be me. It's not that I'm not careful. It's just that I will generally take a shortcut to things that I know can be like a logo. I'll wait until I absolutely have a logo. In the meantime, I'll just, in fact, you'll see that in just a minute. I'll work with something that I created very quickly. Are you a jump in kind of person like I am? Do you jump in and take over? So that can be something that helps you jump in and do the next thing. So I have a question on the board. I've done fundraising for our schools district's education foundation and raised 100,000 in a very diverse community. I assist my husband now with his real estate company's marketing, but I'm ready to do this, but just super scared and not too sure how to begin. You're really not in a situation by yourself with that. It is definitely something that's super scary. Think about the excitement. Remember the enticement. Think about that's driving you. If there weren't an aspect of scariness to it, everyone would be doing it. Everyone would be doing it. So you've got to take a little bit of a risk. Usually that risk just has to do with knowing what your plan is and what the path forward. So do you want to do this slowly and on your own? And there are some women that would rather go forward with taking lessons learned, like what you've just learned today, taking the Are You Ready assessment that I'll give you the URL for in just a minute, taking little by little and just listening for the cues as they move you along. That's absolutely a path that you can take. Or do you want to take a more formalized process now? Do you want to start that process now? And for those of you that do, I'm introducing the Time to Fly course. I called it Time to Fly based on Kim's experience with her Time to Fly posters. And I just love that because to me, it says so much what's in our heart. It says to me what happened when I left my corporate job and went into consulting. It was my time to fly. And so that's why I named it. It's a course for women, only women launching a consulting business. And it's a customized course just for women like you. I've got a process. I've got a 12-week process, and I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek. I want to step you through what's involved in that process so that you can get a feel for what you get. Now, make no mistake, one of your options is working with me. Let me tell you what that would look like. All right. So you'll get with me, the Time to Fly course, you'll get a small coaching group. It's a weekly call in of no more than 10 women. It'll become a small community support for you. So if you're the kind of woman that likes dealing with other women that are in like situations and can lean on one another and can call each other, maybe not even when you're in your weekly coaching group, this is absolutely for you. One of the first things we'll share is what I'm going to call a Time to Fly song. And I don't know if it was REO Speedwagon. I'm going back to the 80s, I think, but the Time for Me to Fly is one of my driving songs. So one of the first things I'm going to have this small group do is identify a song that gets you motivated and gets you going. So often music can get you in the right frame of mind to feel motivated and up about something that's exciting. You'll get a small group that holds you accountable. It's like-minded women. They're doing exactly what you're doing. They have those same fears and those same questions. They have the same outlooks and they have the same hangups for the most part. I'll also give you some weekly assignments. So when you're thinking, I don't know where to start, I will give you the place to start. We're going to run for 12 weeks, and each will include a manageably sized assignment that will start defining some of that foundation for your business. Some things, well, I'll tell you what some of those things are in just a minute. So that's part of what you'll get weekly assignments. You'll also get a plan to develop your own business. Now, my approach is not the stodgy business plan method. I've been successfully doing a consulting business for 28 years, and I have never had a business plan. I've had organization, I've had goals, I've had short-term focus and long-term focus, but it doesn't look like a stodgy business plan. There'll be pieces of a business plan that we'll put into place as we go along, but I don't want to weigh you down with documents and models that are for big companies. I'm also going to give you what I've learned in the form of checklists. I'll share with you my templates. I'll share with you my outlines. For example, when I do a proposal for a client, I have a very specific format in the outline of the proposal that I send back to them. I call it a draft, a discussion draft, or I call it a draft proposal. And that kind of takes the formality out of it for my potential client. I'll give you the format that I use for that with a discovery that's built into it, including what your proposed cost is. So we're going to talk about rates. That's a piece of what you'll be doing for your field assignment. Okay. Additionally, you'll get an understanding of the three legs of the business. Your business is not just about the consulting. Probably not news to you, but your business is not just about the consulting. It's the service itself, but it's also a lot of administrative stuff. It's a business administration, and there's a marketing piece to it. So there's a lot of non-revenue generating time spent. That's what I do a lot. Non-revenue generating time. That's okay. It's built in. You do it now at your job. You do things that, isn't making money for your nonprofit or for your company. So your regular business has that too. You will create several things. One of the first items that you'll create early on is a start at gathering your skills and expertise. You'll translate that into services. You'll translate that eventually into something that looks like a more refined service portfolio. You'll create that, but that will evolve. I promise you, once you get out into the community and you start talking to people and actually interacting, and you have a few clients under your belt, you'll find that there's things that you didn't know you were better at and you want to integrate or adjust your portfolio. That's perfectly normal, perfectly fine. You'll also create your business brand. That's fun. Sometimes people are like, oh, I just love doing my logo or my business card. This is a part of what has to be done, your business brand. It includes an option. Carol, as many of you know from Skirt Strategies, can set up a website for you as an option in a quick, easy way, in a way that you can maintain it. So she's there as a resource to help you as an optional add-on if needed. You'll also create your business management systems and techniques. You have to be able to stay organized. I'll tell you, you have to be organized. So there's tips to invoicing. What sort of software do you need to be using? A decision as basic as that. How you do your scheduling. So you'll be creating some of your processes for how you schedule. And then learning. So what do you learn? I'll tell you, many of you are really good at marketing. I'll bet you're great at marketing. I bet you're great at I'll say I'll bet you're great at networking. Translating that into connecting with people for your own marketing purposes can be a little bit different. I get that. So we'll be talking about how you do that. It's important because the networking now that you'd be doing as a consultant, the networking now versus the networking as a consultant looks different because it begins with your ability now to ask questions and diagnose. You may do that to a certain degree right now, and you don't know it or you don't label it that way. So including in what you'll learn is the sales process. I actually teach sales training in my background. And so I will give you a great sales process that begins with building great relationships so that you can endure and then get the person to share with you and do some discovery that then turns into, here's what I can do for you, client. All right. You'll also learn the characteristics and behaviors of a great consultant, including how you ask terrific questions and how you become resourceful to them and seen as someone that continues to come back. One of the things that's different about this, because it's different for women manage themselves differently. And so we're going to talk about personal productivity, including you personal. What are your productivity points of contact? What do you do well and where do you drift? I would bet that many of you would say, if I asked you, hey, how many of you are a multitasker? My friend Megan calls it a switch tasker. How many of you are a multitasker? Yeah, multitasking can be a kill for keeping yourself focused and productive. So we'll talk about personal productivity. Also, I don't know that anybody else really talks about this much, but dealing with the ups and the downs, dealing with failure, dealing with those naysayers in your life, and how to blow past them. A small group of intimate women, 10 of you, no more than 10, will be talking about that so that you can lean on one another for that. Plus, loads of other stuff. All right. That's what I've created for you. That's what I've got in my kit bag, and that's what I've got out there. This course is not. This is not a virtual course. This is not a buy and download. It's not something that's pre-recorded. This is not a course for women who want to do it 5 years from now. And by the way, let me just also say that I go back to the virtual course. I am in that. I am facilitating that every week for 12 weeks. I'll be with you live for an hour and a half, talking about where you are and taking you through it. And that's why I want to keep it small. The course is not for women who want to do it 5 years from now, although if you're the kind of long-term planner and you want to dabble in it, it's just your conversation is going to be different than others that are in the room. So I don't want women that are doing it 5 years from now. I want women that are doing it in the next year or the next 2 years or maybe even the next 3 years, but they're ready to start doing some of the serious work. It's also not for women who don't think they can commit for 2 to 4 hours a week. So an hour and a half, between 1 hour and 90 minutes, we'll spend together on the phone, and we'll use an internet base for visual so that we're looking at the same time, probably something much like the webinar format or GoToMeeting. So you've got to be able to commit something to this. And, if you can't commit 2 to 4 hours in order to go into something that you dream of, then I don't think we're a good fit for one another. I mean, I know that you've got I know all of you are swamped. I know what your lives are like. They're crazy. To me, it's a matter of commitments and where something is for a priority for you. If you're here and you're thinking this might be for me, then ask yourself, is it something that would be a priority for me? Hey, go back to that thought of where's your head now and what's exciting for you. This, not just the scary, but the exciting. That is your driving emotion. And you use that plus your time to fly song, and it will help you show up. It'll be, you guys know, many of you know me. I'm fun. I'm interactive. This is not going to be a blah, 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 blah. Okay. So you personally, if you're one of those that's ready to begin launching this process, if you think that you are ready to fly, all right? And even if you want to know more, you probably want to know what's the investment. And it is an investment. It's absolutely an investment. Let's start with, what would you typically pay? I mean, if you were to go to a one-on-one startup consultant, I mean, I'm showing $8,800, but honest to God, I know people that would easily charge you $20,000 to get a business started. I would say if I had to look at someone that was working with you one-on-one, somewhere in the $8,000 to $10,000 range, maybe $8,800, maybe that would be a discount. So let's say you got it at a discount. Your total value would be somewhere around there. I am pricing this because we're in a small group and it's manageable. I'm pricing this at $3,400. The Time to Fly course is going to be $3,400. Now, and eventually it will become, it's probably going to go up after this first year. I wanted to have it at something manageable this first year. And since it's newly launched this first year, if you're in that unique group of 10 women, I'm going to start it off just a little bit lower. And I'm going to do that because there's so much that I'll be learning from you, that you will be helping me as much as I'll be helping you. So that course is $2,800. And that can look like, if you're thinking, well, how the heck am I going to do that? That can look like one payment of $2,800, or if you want to do it in a payment plan, because I know that's one big chunk, 3 payments of $975. If you do it in one payment, that saves you $125 for $425. No, it says $125. That one looks like a 4. I was like, wow, that's it's $125. So $2,800 in one payment. If you are a Skirt Strategy subscribed member, and those are the women that pay $37 a month to get regular training, I'll take another 10% off of any of the above numbers, another 10% off. That, by the way, I don't want to get too complicated in this chart, but that, by the way, for a regular membership where you get the quarterly training and you get a small coaching group aside from Time to Fly, and you get all the past webinars that have been sold for somewhere between $25 and $50. You get all of those free. They're all in the archives. That alone is worth it to save you some money. Even if you're in it just for the 12 weeks that you're on the Time to Fly course. So know that, and I can send you the link for being a member if that interests you, but we'll make sure you get that discount if that's of interest to you. So those 10 women. Now, here's a bonus. If you're thinking that you need some talking through of this, if you're not one of those, oh my God, just give me the link. I'm perfectly happy to sit down with you with a 30-minute consultation and talk about your situation. I learned from you, so it's worth it for me as well. And let's figure out your situation. I'll talk you through it. So if you want to schedule me for a 30-minute consultation, do it. Absolutely do it. I've got my schedule online at skirtstrategies.com/schedule. Now, I mentioned earlier that there's a ready to be a consultant check sheet. The ready to be a consultant check sheet is on that same page, skirtstrategies.com/schedule. So you can get two things at that page. The first one is you'll see that it's a link for here's my schedule and how to get on mine and request a 15 or 30 minute, whichever one you want. And then at the bottom of the page is a link. Are you ready to be a consultant check sheet? And that's got a couple things on it. It's not exhaustive. I wanted it to fit on one sheet. It looks at some of the financial, it looks at some of the mental, and it again has the link for getting on my schedule. If you're also one of those people, and by the way, for those of you that are online, I'm also showing another one of the Time to Fly posters from Kim. And this is so pretty. This woman holding balloons that look like the different continents, and it says it's time to fly. So to me that's motivational because it's pretty and it looks like something that's lofty. If you're ready to save a spot, go look at the skirtstrategy.com/time to fly course, and that has dashes in between. Time dash to dash TO fly dash course, time to fly course. To save a spot, there's a link down at the bottom that will give you a form. Actually, there's a form in there. Put your name in there, and if it's either an interest or it's I really want to save a spot, go ahead and put it down there, and I will get in touch with you and let you know where I am on the registration. We're going to meet on Monday evenings. So the start time is going to be sometime late in the afternoon or after work. And oh gosh, I have a visitor. There's a big lizard that just crawled up onto my window. It's scary. So know that both of those links are important. skirtstrategies.com/schedule or skirtstrategies.com if you're ready to save a spot/time to fly course. If all else fails, reply to the emails that you've gotten from me, and I'll make sure I account for you. Now that's a lot to think about. And if you need to sleep on it, that's great. But know that there will be a limited number of chances to go through this first one. So I am actually perfectly happy answering some questions of yours. So if you all would love to ask me some questions, if you're online and would like to ask some questions in the question box, please do so right there. Okay. I've got, let's see, one of you that had mentioned that that you're being led spiritually, that the universe is dropping a big black arrow in front of your eyes, and that's what it's doing. Several people are suggesting that I do my own thing, in this case, writing grants. Your webinar popped up after about 5 minutes that he said that. I love the timing. Just very much on the front of my mind right now. And most of all, I'm ready for a change. Yes, very much of a jump in kind of person. I'd love to have you in that course. There's a reason that I do this course for women only. I love men. But when and I found this out through my consulting, because one of my first classes that I did for I called it Reinventing Your Leadership. And I had 12 people in there, and only one of them was a man. And the man opted out of the course, which I accused him of being the only man and not wanting to be in it. He said, no, 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 it's not because I'm the only man. Then from that point on, there were 11 women, and we went through a series of 3 classes to talk about where you were and your direction as a leader. And it changed when there were only women in the room. Now, I've had trainings before, and you probably have too, or been in meetings where it's just women. But when it's just women and the conversation is about opening yourself up, or developing yourself, or being vulnerable, or saying, this is what I'm scared of. When there's a man in the room, it just changes the dynamic. I mean, there's a lot of social science that has stuff to do with that. But when a man is in the room, we just don't let go that much. That's why about 10 years ago, I decided to focus specifically on skirt strategies and on helping women, because we think differently, we process differently, we go through dealing with our baggage differently, our self-confidence is different. And so that's really the important piece of being in a small community. Okay, so another question. What are your thoughts about going into business with a friend? We've done a lot of volunteer work together and have skill sets that complement one another. Yet, I don't want to ruin the friendship. Your thought? I think you're very smart to consider the friendship being at risk. I have friends that I would do work with, and when I think about the ones that I have worked with before, it's because somewhere in the beginning of our relationship, we came to understand one another very quickly. So I would say, I hate to be the cop out and say this depends, but it depends on the person. How emotionally intelligent is the other person? Like, would you be able to give that person feedback? Carol and I started a business relationship together. We're great friends now, but we really started as a friendship. And she and I we complement each other a lot. She's very easy to get along with, so that's what works for me. So I would say it can be done if you're very careful about the leadership style of that person, the conflict style, and what sort of history you've had together. Do you think that you can get through having business together without, killing one another? So that might be a gut instinct kind of thing. Um, okay, someone said they're having to sign off because they're having a big storm. Here in the Southwest, we love having the storms. So hope you're safe. Okay. So tax deductible to your business too. Okay, Jordy, thank you. Having a tax deduct. Oh, yes. If you exactly, thank you. I get it now. If you are investing in the Time to Fly course, you can absolutely take it as a tax deduction. So I am set up as an LLC, and there are some benefits as an LLC. But even if you're a sole proprietorship, which is super easy to do, you just have to file a Schedule C, which many of you probably are anyway. You can still take it off as a tax deduction. So if you're in a 20% tax bracket, it's costing you 20% less because it's an expense that comes straight off of your income. So know that. I am not a tax expert, so I'm very careful about some of the areas where I'm taking you through, because it's important to know that your areas, and when we looked at what areas you all are thinking about going into, there can be a lot there with legalities and with certifications. Do you need to have licensing? One of the weeks we'll talk about, you'll be doing some research to look at what the licensing is and what you need to have in place. I know what it is in my state. I know how to get not just a coaching certification, which is not a requirement for what I do, but I know how to operate a business both at the state and the city level. So you'll do some research for that. I'll help you wherever I can. But areas that are more specific to your industry, especially if you're in healthcare. I know there's a lot of state mandates and federal mandates. So you'll look at that by talking to other people that have done it and can bring to the table what you need to know. Okay. Continue to send me emails and questions, I'm so glad to answer those questions. We've got about 5 minutes, so if you want to ask some more, I'm not on email right now, so I know someone is saying that they're just about to get off and they're going to send me an email. That's fine. I won't be able to address that question to the group. Let me give you a little bit of insight into what my days look like, because at some level, I think we're all a little voyeur. I love knowing what other people's lives are. It's part of what makes me a really good management consultant, is getting into someone else's day to day and finding out what is it like for you. So if you're thinking about doing anything that has to do with productivity or an organizational development, finding out what someone's life is like at work can be very, very helpful. That's data collection. So my ideal day looks like this. When I get up in the morning, because I'm in business for myself, one of the first things I do, I don't advocate this, by the way, is check my email. I get all my business from email, or I get notifications that something happened online from email. So that gets me out of bed in the morning and it gets me excited. I usually will do some work at the coffee, around the breakfast table while I'm drinking my coffee. I'll usually just catch up on emails. I like to get it done and out of the way pretty quickly. I hope there's no shame in that. And then my days look like a really flexible combination of on site with a client. Like 2 days ago, I was sitting in a room with a board of a nonprofit agency because they're doing an executive transition. About a year ago, I did a culture survey for this agency, as well as have done a lot of professional development with their leadership team. About a year ago, I did an assessment for what their culture was and delivered a report. And when the executive director decided that she was leaving, she called me and she said, "Katie, there's nobody that knows our culture better than you do. You spent all that time researching and developing that report." Remember when I talked about areas of consult that could be perfect for you, that you may not have thought about? And I mentioned audits. Well, assessments fit into that. So the culture survey that I did, I got paid for to spend the time doing interviews, one-on-one interviews, small group, focus group interviews, and listened for what I know to be the 8 areas of culture that I wanted to measure. Took all that info in, did an online survey as well for as many of the 160 employees as could respond, got a pretty good response, and then translated that into findings and themes. And then at the very end of that report, consultant recommendations. And guess what that did? Consultant recommendations. I lined out, here's what your mid-level management needs. One of the things I found out is their mid-management was dying for professional development, and they were dying to be listened to more. And we all know that if you're in any sort of an organization that's halfway big size, they have the monkey in the middle are the folks that need it. So I listened to that. So back to what I was doing this week, I was in with their board talking about how to best get them through this executive transition. So I'm now in there for the next 6 months as a project here and there, a few hours a week, helping them identify what their job requirement is for the new person and teaching the board, because the board doesn't have any expertise in this, teaching the board how to interview someone and how to bring them in a transition that works. So there's a lot more to that. So I've spent time doing that. Tomorrow I'm doing a professional development for 2 different groups. One of them is a organization that offers developmentally disabled professionals training. And so I'm talking to them about networking. Also talking to another nonprofit in the afternoon. It's a nonprofit week about professional development for their staff, a smaller organization, so that they, and the 7 sites that they are around the state, so they can start working better together. And then I played, like I mentioned, I play tennis probably a couple times. Sometimes I go to yoga in the middle of the day. I schedule that into my day because it's important to me and it's a priority. And guess what? I end up working on the weekends because I get my momentum going on something and I dig it. And when you're doing something that you love and you know you're doing it for yourself, you actually look forward to it. You like the time doing it. So it's time invested now. Sometimes my husband will say, hello, can you come down from your office? Because it's upstairs. Um, so I don't always like to be hiding out in my office, but I definitely have what works for me. Okay. So let me put the links up one more time for your ready to be a consultant check sheet and scriptstrategies.com/schedule. If you think that your next level of commitment is to go ahead and get one of those 10 spots, get in touch with me pretty quickly, because 10 is not a lot of spots. So it would worry me if we couldn't fit you in. If you think that you're ready to talk and you need 30 minutes with me and I can work you through whether you're a good fit for that, I'm glad to do that. Get on my schedule. I've got lots of time in the next week. And I am always available online via email. Like I said, it's the first thing I do in the morning is I check my email. And then I try to get away from it. I'll try to read for a little while and have my sanity time. I'm curious as to how many of you find that you have no sanity time right now. You don't get a minute to yourself. There's scheduling that is really tricky when you're doing it for an agency or an organization. Maybe you feel obligated, or maybe you're just driven, or maybe your job scope is bigger than what one person can handle. When you become a consultant, learning to be disciplined with your schedule, this is something we'll learn in the Time to Fly course. Learning to be disciplined in your schedule is really important. I find that the weeks where I am nuts is because when I look back at the time that I scheduled that week and started filling in the blanks on my calendar, I had this sense of, oh yeah, I can do that. Oh yeah, I can do it. When you work for yourself, it's often feast or famine, and you never know when that famine is going to happen. Consulting has, in some cases, a long lead time. And if it's a lead time that's, going to take someone 6 months to feel comfortable before they can commit something to me, then I'm going to pack my schedule right, 5 months from now, thinking that I'm going to need it. Well, that can, come and go, but you'll start to get a little bit better at knowing which days you want to be able to set aside some time for yourself. I use it akin to the analogy of if you were at the dentist's office, and you were sitting in the dentist chair and being worked on. No pain intended. But you wouldn't schedule something for that. You've got the dentist appointment. So you protect that. When we have another priority on our calendar, like going and having coffee with a girlfriend, or going to yoga, or taking a walk, or jumping on your bike and tootling around for an hour, we often don't give that the priority, but it should be. It's your sanity and it's your health. And so managing your schedule as a consultant is really important in that way. So I'm going to leave it right there. We've run a little bit over the hour, and there's one more question that I'll take a look at, and it is, how do I hone in on my gift or skill set? Many ask me about parent advice, writing skills, election and advocacy, and cooking and baking. Wow, that's quite a wide range. I'm finding it hard to determine which is my truest passion. I love each of them for different reasons. Yeah, that is going to be hard. It might be that you have a couple of coals in the fire, and you run them in parallel until you do some screening and some research. It could be that cooking and baking can't make you any money, or it needs an extraordinary amount of principle to get started, and so you don't want to go that route. Or maybe you do. Maybe with a $20,000 principle and getting something, maybe a kitchen started, one that Department of Health will okay, because that's one of the hoops you'd have to jump through. Maybe with that, it's a great prospect because not that many people are doing it. I'm working right now with I'm not working with her, but she's a colleague of mine that started her own cooking school, and she does custom baking. And so every Monday she does cooking for clients and delivers food for them, creates the menu the week before, shops for it on Monday and bakes for it or cooks for it, and then delivers it. And then the rest of the week She does cooking classes, so she has parties and wine. And I mean, how fun! That could be something that drives you, but you don't know what that looks like until you get a little bit farther along. The way that the Time to Fly course works will allow you to have a little bit of dabbling in more than one area before you commit. And in fact, you're not really even going to commit until you want to say, oh, I want to put out an extra, few $100 to get a website started. And, the website's got to be cooking or writing skills or parent advice. So there will be some pieces that will, you don't want to go with the investment until, or you don't want to go start talking to people about, um, actually, you probably do want to start talking to people about what they need. That could be important. That could be a real eye opener for realizing that in one of the things you mentioned, which is parent advice, that all the people that come to you for advice on parenting skills end up being a pain in the ass to work with. I don't want to say that that's what people are that come to you, but what if you find that out, that it brings that sort of a person as a clientele? There will be industries that do that. And so just know that there can be hard people to work with in the client world, and easier. Think about what that might be as well. So hope I answered that for you. Okay. So let me leave it at that. And you've got my information. This has been a ton of fun. Loved seeing all your emails ahead of time. Thanks for that. And thanks, and continue to do that. Continue to talk to me on email. This is my shtick. I love it. This is what I became a consultant for. And when I became a consultant, I had no idea that it was going to turn into this. It's an absolute evolution. So I thank you for that. I'm going to, as you guys are checking out, I'm going to, this is sometimes kind of fun, take everybody off. Actually, it's usually chaos, but we'll see what happens. We're going to take everybody off audio, and I will say goodbye. And then if you want to, before you hang up, say goodbye to me, that would be absolutely great. Okay. Let's see. Unmute all. Okay. Oh, wait. Hang on. You're not unmuted yet. Okay. I hear some of you.
Bye.
Bye.
What?
There's someone on the road. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye. Nice meeting you. Nice talking to you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome. Bye.